You're watching Radioactive right here on YouTube. My name is Victoria. With me right now, I'm joined by Evan Potter. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm great, Victoria. Good to chat with you finally, and thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on today. And for people watching this who may not know who you are Lilith Czar's guitar player. And I'll get into how you met her and everything like that later on in the interview. But first off, I
Sure.
just want to start off by talking about the current tour you're on with Halestorm, the PrettyReckless, and the Warning. How are you enjoying this tour so far?
I'm having a blast. Unfortunately, our friends in the Pretty Reckless haven't been able to be out to a show yet because of some sickness that they had floating around. But it sounds like they'll be back out in a few days, and we're very, very excited for that. But yeah, we've done about a week out here now. Back out with our, really good friends in Hailstorm. That that camp, from band members to crew to everybody that is in the Hailstorm world of things, are the most incredible, welcoming, and just awesome people that you could ever want to meet. So, especially to have been out with them with Evanescence for, a few months at the end of last year, to get to come out again, it feels like we're just getting to come back out and hang out with our friends. And the fact that they're such a kick-ass rock band that puts on incredible shows every night is just like a extra bonus.
Yeah.
And of course, the Warning is also out here on this tour. I had, they just came on my radar within the last 6 months or so, and I checked out their music and checked out their live show, and I was just blown away. Those girls are so talented and and just so nice. I was really looking forward to getting out here and to get to meet them and to see their show. And yeah, they're just the sweetest. So I'm having a ton of fun out here.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have only been on the road for a little bit now. So do you have a favorite show that you've played so far, or one that you're looking most forward to?
Okay, so we played in Kansas City earlier this week, and a huge portion of my family, I'm originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, and I have a lot of family in Kansas City. So the venue we played outside, it was the place called the Starlight Theater, which I had never been before, but it's this beautiful outdoor venue. And fortunately, I had a bunch of my family members that got to come to that show, and so that was definitely special. It's always fun to be able to cross paths, when you're in different areas of the country with family or friends, or sometimes it happens randomly where you'll just be at a show, or you'll be, hanging out afterwards, and someone will walk in the room and you'll be like, what are you doing here? Like, what, how's it going? So good to see you.
Yeah.
As far as shows that I'm looking forward to, I'm really excited for when the Pretty Reckless gets out here. I haven't really had a chance to hear them or see them live before. So I think as of now, that's what I'm really looking forward to, is for them to get out here and just to get this ball rolling and do. I'm sure they're gonna bring it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I'm very jealous for anyone who can attend this tour because it's one kick-ass lineup.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So far so great.
Mm-hmm. And before this tour, you guys had joined Black Veil Bride's Motionless in White and Ice Nine Kills on the Trinity of Terror tour. How much fun was that tour, and just to tour with all of those bands?
That was an absolute blast. Those shows were incredible. I mean, getting to open for three bands that are such icons in that genre, we kind of had a really awesome opportunity to walk into some of these shows where there was almost, like built-in excitement and built-in fans that we knew were going to be there. And many of the shows were sold out, and it was a ton of fun. And I for sure, I know that other members of my camp feel exactly the same way about this, but speaking for myself, I mean, I absolutely made some lifelong friends and connections through that tour. Just tons of really, really great people. And especially when it comes to crew members, there's a lot of these people will bounce around to all sorts of different camps and all sorts of different bands, and so it's fun when I do the same, that I'll like sometimes I'll go out and do guitar tech work as well for bands and things like that, and to get in those situations and run into people that where it's like, oh, you were with that band when I was with that band, and now we're both doing something else, but here we are, and it's very fun. But the Trinity tour was such a good time for us. The shows were incredible. I specifically will never forget I think it was the last show that we did with Trinity was in Philadelphia at the Fillmore, and it was just absurd. I mean, packed out. Everybody was going crazy the whole time. I think that was the only show that we had, like multiple mosh pits happen, which for the opener, especially for bands like that who, is guaranteed to have moshing and craziness going on, that felt pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And other than that moment, are there any other like highlights from that tour that you can kind of pinpoint?
For me, the best highlights that I can that I felt like were just making some of these new friends out and about. I mean, from being like on show days or off days, hanging out after shows and just getting to meet some of these people and getting to talk about, different mutual friends, and just getting to exchange, getting to tell people how much you appreciate, their music and how talented you think they are, and how much, some of those bands I was listening to since I was a kid, and then to be able to be out in that context and just be able to, know those people and to get to watch what they do and get to exchange props to each other was a very, very cool, rewarding, and fulfilling thing to be able to do. I mean, I think for most people involved in music that I know, getting the opportunity to meet people that who have made music that you enjoy, and just getting to say like, thanks for that is a fun opportunity.
Yeah. And now kind of getting into you performing with Lilith every night, how much do you enjoy playing on stage with her every night and all the other band members and just being with the crew and everything like that?
It is absolutely the best. I mean, I say it all the time when I make posts and when I talk to people that, I mean, these people that I get to tour with and play with are truly some of my most favorite people in the world. Some of my closest friends. And it's been a blast. I mean, the band has now been playing with Lilith for about 3 years. And so we've had that amount of time to, get to know each other better and to, learn how we play together and learn how we work together. And now that we have, kind of the fundamentals down of what needs to go on with the songs and the parts and the show itself, it's great to just be able to travel around the country with, people that you really care about and have a genuinely very, very fun time with. And I'm very fortunate to be able to be stage right with Lindsay. I'm sure anybody who's watching this who knows who I am absolutely knows who Lindsay is. And to get to play next to her each night was just, I mean, she's just such a powerhouse of a musician and such a fun person to watch. I mean, she just has so much fun while she's playing that you can't help but have that translate when are standing that close to somebody getting to perform music. So that's don't get me wrong, I love Justice is incredible, Lilith is incredible, everybody who's in the mix of this camp is fantastic. But specifically for me, I like that I get to hold down stage right with Linz.
Mm-hmm. And how long I guess you kind of mentioned how long you've been with Juliet in the band, but kind of how did you meet her and become her guitarist?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I moved from Lincoln, Nebraska to LA to attend the Musicians Institute out there. I did the associates program, which was like a year and a half in the mix of touring and kind of getting my foot in the door musically in LA. And as I was graduating, I was approached by the guy who at the time was the head of the guitar program at MI, really fantastic dude, fantastic guitar player named Stieg Matheson. And him and I became buddies throughout the time that I was at MI. And he was kind of like keeping an eye on me and, checking in about what I was doing, and was really just a friend and a mentor to me throughout the whole time I was there. And as I was graduating, he was approached about looking to get like some auditions together for a band that was sort of being formed for an upcoming tour for the summer. And so he tossed my name in that hat. I did the audition process. That also, included what ended up being Lindsay and Justice. And over the course of a couple of days, we ended up getting chosen to kind of be the band for, at the time, Juliet, but, Lilith, of course. And so that's when that formed. And then we rehearsed, got everything together. And then we went out and did the Rockstar Disrupt tour with her in 2019. And we've been going after it ever since.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious to know, when Lilith released Create from Filth and Dust, did you track guitar on that album?
I tracked guitars on the song Feed My Chaos. So I was approached by her, the guy who produced the record. His name is Scott Stevens, incredible producer, produces, basically anybody that you can think of who's in sort of the active rock scene. And he sent me the song. And so the parts were already written and everything, but he asked for, just for me to record my tracks of the song and to add a couple solos in the mix, and in the mix of things, which I was incredibly flattered and honored to get the opportunity to do, any of that. And it was very fun, because in our back and forth conversation, as I was sending him different ideas of solo ideas and stuff like that, we hit a point where we talked on the phone, or he sent me an email or something, and was like, man, I really want you on the last one to just go like full Dimebag Darrell, like think like the end of Paradise City, and just rip. And so for me, a guitar player who loves all these kind of things, that was sort of like a very fun green light to be able to be given in that sort of context. And then of course, I'm incredibly thankful for Lilith for giving me the opportunity to play on her record and to add my own creative elements to her music. That's something that I'm still very, very appreciative of her for. And especially in our live show, there's a few other liberties like that she's given me as well, which means a ton to me.
Yeah. And when you play live, because I saw you guys play in Edmonton, I saw that you had put a bunch of guitar solos in a bunch of the songs. So when you were making those solos, what was your process in making them and deciding which elements you want to incorporate in each solo?
Yeah. So when it came to Feed My Chaos, I didn't know exactly, how intense that the solos needed to be, for lack of a better word. Because as a guitar player who loves all things rock and roll and metal, we kind of have a tendency to play lots and lots of notes as fast as we can, and to try to, do as much as possible in that amount of time. But, playing for the song and playing to what I knew their kind of plan for the album was going to be, I kind of started a little bit on the easier side of things. I wasn't trying to play too fast or too crazy. I was trying to just come up with some ideas that fit the song nicely and kind of lent itself to a guitar solo, but wasn't, the whole point of what was happening in the song. And so as I did that and kind of went back and forth with Scott, sent him a few ideas, we just kind of mutually kind of figured out the level of intensity of solo that needed to happen for that song. And that's kind of when that moment of like, man, just rip, just channel your inner Dimebag Darrell or whatever. And for anybody who knows me, Dimebag is like my pinnacle sort of guitar influence these days, especially. So that's how that came together. There's another solo that you obviously know very well, that has been added to 100 Little Deaths. That's a solo that was not on the record, but in practicing that song for for getting into rehearsals and just kind of jamming as us guitar players tend to do. I had thrown that solo together and happened to send, a video of it to Lilith, just kind of a like, hey, this is fun, right? Like I was jamming over your song, and she heard it, and she responded back to me and was like, oh my gosh, like you need to do that live. Like that's so fun. And so, of course, super flattered. By the time we were rehearsing again, I sort of like checked in on that again and was like, so you still want me to play this? And she was like, yes, please. And so that was one that just kind of came about from jamming and thinking like, well, had I, if I was going to write a solo for this song in this section, what would it sound like? Like what would be fun? And it just so happened that I get the privilege of working with somebody who's open to creative influences and different pieces like that in the mix of her live shows.
Mm-hmm. And this next question I ask every time I ask an artist this question, it changes every time, but what's your favorite song to play live and why? And what is your favorite solo to play live?
I think that, ooh, man, this has definitely even changed a bit from this tour from the last tour to now. There's something about 100 Little Deaths and the energy of that song that is so fun to play live, and it translates so well. And that's definitely a favorite of mine. I suppose Feed My Chaos, as far as solos are concerned, would probably be my favorite because, I get, those are mine. And so I can feel like it's very fun to be able to play things that I sort of, came up with in the live setting. However, given the nature of some events that have gone on in our world over the last few weeks, King, I think, has officially taken on even more sort of meaning and importance in this day and age with the message that is behind it and the entire message that Lilith is all about. And so it was kind of oddly serendipitous in a way that things in our legal system went the way that they did right before this tour happened, that now, even though that song was powerful before, I think that everyone can kind of feel that there's a little bit extra intensity and extra importance behind it. And so that one I think is definitely been one of my favorites to play. It really feels like, I don't know, I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to play for somebody like Lilith and play in a band with somebody like Lilith and like Lindsay, where I can be along as an ally and supporter of all things equal and all things right. I would say all things correct. So King is definitely I think that as of right now is sort of probably my favorite one to be playing.
Mm-hmm. And which song do you feel like gets the crowd like pumped the most, or does it depend on the night?
I think pretty consistently Anarchy gets people quite fired up. I mean, of course, that song has had a lot of really awesome traction and really awesome response and feedback over the last 6 months or year or so, with all the fantastic exposure that Octane did with that song and all the radio play. It's really fun, especially we tend to have that song towards the end of our set, and you can almost kind of like pick out the fans that have been listening to the album constantly and know every word and know every song. It's like there's almost this kind of like quiet anticipation when we finish one of the songs that they're kind of like, all right, is Anarchy coming? Like, when's it coming?
Yeah.
And so by the time that we're finally playing at the end, people are definitely fired up and singing along, and it's great. It's a blast.
Mm-hmm. And now getting into a bit of the touring aspect of being a musician, what are your favorite parts about touring? Sure. And maybe not so favorite parts?
I really enjoy touring. Who you're around has a lot to do with it. And as I said before, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I get to be out here with people that I really genuinely care about as people and also musicians. I'm also a very, very big travel enthusiast. So just the element of getting of somehow that my job is that I can travel around getting to play music and do it with my friends is incredible. I mean, that's still is not something that's ever lost on me about how wild that is. And as far as like least favorite part, I don't know if I have any parts that stick out to me that are specifically like, oh man, you know, this thing. But it's just kind of the nature of, you know, having inconsistent places to do laundry, or like, you know, when you're kind of like practical things like that. Yeah. And we have a lot of awesome opportunities to handle such things that, like, you know, lots of times venues have showers and laundry access and stuff like that. And if we're fortunate enough to be on a tour that has catering for lunch and dinner, I mean, that takes a whole load off our plate to even think about of how to, you know, where are we going to get it from? How's it going to get to us? So pretty much just practical things like that if I had to pick something out. But as of now, I've been very, very fortunate that I haven't really had a lot of poor touring experiences. And I think that has a lot to do with the people that I've been able to be around throughout my time touring so far.
Mm-hmm. And now getting into tour stories. I had asked you this beforehand if you have any good stories. So got any good ones? I want to hear them.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So there's a hilarious one that sticks out to me that goes all the way back to the Disrupt tour. That tour was from the get-go so insanely hot. We started in the South. We were, you know, driving through Texas. We were playing in Louisiana and like some of these just insanely hot places. Well, by the time the tour was wrapping up, we were kind of in the west area of the country. And we were playing places like, you know, Arizona and New Mexico that were just, you know, in July. And so it was just brutally hot all the time. So the bus that we were traveling on towards the end and about the last week or so was having major issues as far as like our generator and the air conditioning was concerned. And yeah, on top of all that, the locks on the bus ended up, you know, working about half the time. So there was a day on one of our last shows that I specifically remember us having to get the driver's side window down enough so that we could get somebody in there to unlock it. And while Justice is one of the biggest talents and brains and, you know, just like smartest musical people that I've ever encountered, fortunately for us, he also happens to be one of the smallest bodies. So we all sort of like hoisted Justice up and kind of like got him in through the window with his, you know, feet dangling out the back of it. And he saved the day and got the bus unlocked, and we were able to all get back on there. So that's definitely one that, I mean, even the picture of that is like burned in my mind forever. It was very funny.
Yeah. And now going like way back in your musical career, how did you kind of get into music and start playing guitar?
Yeah. So when I was in like 5th grade, my cousin and I started spending we spent like a summer together, just sort of hanging out. And it just so happened that he had gotten interested in playing guitar. And it wasn't ever really on my radar so much. My dad has been in the musical, like kind of the back end of the music industry my whole life. And when he was younger, he used to play bass in a local band in Lincoln that was, you know, that did pretty well out there. So I knew that, you know, music was very much around me and that sort of thing. But for whatever reason, it never really stuck out to me all that hard. But when my cousin and I sort of got on to it that summer, it just clicked for both of us. And we both got really interested. You know, we learned about tabs and how to learn songs. And that's definitely how the ball got rolling. And then there's these few kind of pivotal little items that I came across that I always think was my like the fundamental pieces of me getting interested in music. And one of those was at the time School of Rock had just come out. So I was watching that incessantly and just being like, oh my gosh, whatever this world is, I need to be a part of. I bought my first album, which was AC/DC's Back in Black. And I bought my first Guitar World magazine that featured Randy Rhoads on the cover. So those few things sort of was like the building blocks of me becoming interested in that world. And so being an AC/DC fan, I very quickly decided that I wanted an SG of some kind, preferably red to look like Angus. So after a handful of months of kind of like proving, I guess, to my parents that I was interested enough to convince them to, help me out to acquire that, I did, and I got a red and black Epiphone SG, and I was just like over the moon about it. I immediately started learning every AC/DC song I could. I started taking lessons, and really just dove head first without any sort of premeditated thought process about like, oh, this is something I want to do forever, or this is something I want to do as a career, or I want to get better at this or that. I was just loving it. So I was just playing all day, trying to figure stuff out for no other reason than it was a lot of fun. And so from there, I played in after school type musical programs and played in bands and stuff all throughout my teenage years. And then in 2017, I ended up taking the plunge and moving from Lincoln, Nebraska to Hollywood, California. Went to MI, had a really good experience there, met some incredible people. And like I mentioned before, my friend Stieg, that story is a great example of how being friendly with people and being, a good person and someone who's easy to be around and easy to communicate with, who also, has the talents to be able to do whatever opportunities, someone wants to toss your way, goes a very, very long way, because every musical thing that I've done since moving to LA and since meeting Stieg has been in some way connected to that guy and those interactions. We did the Disrupt tour with Lilith. We were sharing a bus with Hyra the Hero. And so I became friends with those guys just from, being in proximity with each other for 6 weeks. Those connections ended up leading to doing Shiprocked with them that following year, and then sort of playing bass for their band. As they, we did some live stream stuff last year. We played Rockfest last year. So that other musical thing, like, absolutely would not have happened had, Stieg not been willing to throw my name in the hat of, people. And that's something that I'll always be super appreciative for, and always have at the front of my mind, that the networking and interacting with people really, really is, a huge part of it. You got to be able to play, but you also really got to be able to be around, because there's everybody plays guitar, everybody plays, something, everybody does this. There's a much smaller number of people who can do it, and that you can live 5 feet away from for 6 weeks without wanting to strangle. So that's like a bit of a skill in itself.
Mm-hmm. What would you say some goals that you had were when you were younger? Like, do you think that you accomplished a lot of those goals now?
I have like definitely surpassed pretty much anything that I had really expected to be doing, especially after, my relatively short amount of time being in LA. As you can probably imagine, there's not a super robust music scene in Lincoln, Nebraska, nor is there many people in music or, many other, facets of life who leave and aspire to do bigger things, or to do, things that are a little bit more out of the ordinary. So I really didn't know too much what to expect or what to be kind of looking forward to when I moved out to school. But the one thing that I do I do remember when I first moved out there, I was like, I want to play Warped Tour. I was like, I want to figure out how to play on Warped Tour. And I ended up doing it within 2 years of being there with, with Lilith. It obviously wasn't like the Warped Tour itself, but it was in 2019 when they did like the couple of dates in Atlantic City and in Mountain View, California. And so it was, yeah, after that point, I was like, well, okay, I did that. So now, now what are we shooting for? So at this point, I mean, I'm accomplishing things that I've wanted to do for a long time, like getting to tour and getting to play shows of this size, getting to play with some of these bands, like I said, that I've been listening to, as long as everyone else who's loved these bands has, and becoming friends with these people and getting to travel to all these different places. And yeah, I mean, I'm really loving it. I suppose at this point, my goal is to work with as many awesome people as I can, and just keep this ball rolling and kind of see where I can take it in whatever capacity that means. Like I had mentioned, I also do like tech work for bands. I do backline guitar teching, a little bit of audio stuff here and there, and so that opens doors and opens opportunities to meet new people and to make new friends, and to just see where I can get myself in this sort of musical journey.
Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, you hop on a bunch of different camps with different bands, or you'll go on tour and play guitar or bass with a different band. So sure. When did you kind of decide that you wanted to, I guess that'd be more so like session work, that you want to do kind of that, opposed to starting a band of your own and trying to build it like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if that's something that I ever kind of sat down and thought about specifically, like, you know what, I'm going to lean this direction more than this other direction. It's actually been more of a process of things coming up for me that I sort of capitalize on. And in this case, the first thing ended up being that audition process for Lilith, which is great. So that got presented. Then I met the Hyro guys, and they kind of presented me a similar opportunity, but playing bass as opposed to guitar. Recently I did a tour guitar teching for Atreyu. Those guys were absolutely fantastic, and that connection came about through some of the friends that I had met on the Trinity of Terror tour. And so as these things have been happening for me, I'm just trying to kind of keep the momentum rolling and kind of keep seeing where it takes me. I really don't like to say no to new opportunities that come up, because you really never know what's going to happen or who you're going to meet or who you're going to meet for a little while, that in 2 years, they might call you up and say, hey, we're in a situation that we need somebody for. I remember, hanging out on that last tour, and it was very fun, and you're obviously talented, and you're easy to be around. So if you want to come out and help us out, we'd really appreciate it. Those kind of opportunities are fun, and it's kind of like I don't know, it's kind of almost like this living thing where you don't know when it's going to pop up, but when they do, you kind of get some opportunities to explore avenues that you might not have thought when I got involved in, when I moved out to California. I thought, all right, I'm going to go to school to be a guitar player. And then I started working at a rehearsal studio in LA, and started doing things like dealing with backline and dealing with audio and dealing with more so kind of like stage production. That in itself has lent, a handful of opportunities, and that information that I've learned there has been absolutely huge in my kind of versatility while being out on the road. Because if you're working with limited crew or working with limited resources, when random shit hits the fan, for lack of a better way of saying it, having some sort of basis to draw from, to think, okay, well, that one day at work when this thing happened, I did this, so hopefully that can work. And oftentimes, fortunately in my case, it has. So that's that job specifically is a great example of a sort of offshoot of the music industry that I had never intended on or expected getting involved in, that has proved to be incredibly helpful in my, guitar playing performance gigs.
Mm-hmm. And I just have two more questions for you. First one,
yeah.
Do you have a dream venue that you would like to play at anywhere in the world?
Yes, this is going to sound kind of probably funny to anybody, but of all the touring that I've been able to do thus far, I have not yet played in Nebraska at all. So I'm sure that I got like the Wembleys and some of these like really awesome, venues on my list. Absolutely. But I really, really would love to play, one of the bigger venues like in Lincoln. It would be so fun. Like, there's an arena out there, there's an outdoor, like kind of amphitheater sort of place. So there's some very legit, venues to be played at. The routing for me just hasn't ended up there yet. So I'm very, very excited for whenever the opportunity for me to do like my sort of homecoming show were to happen. Cause it's fun when, I've played like areas in Colorado and Iowa and Kansas City and some of the neighboring areas. And I'm very fortunate and lucky to have a really big, awesome support group and family and friends and people who just kind of like have been following what I've been doing since I moved. That, it'd be much easier to say, hey, everybody, like I'm playing down the street in Lincoln, as opposed to, hey, can you drive 3 hours to Kansas City? Mm-hmm. Which, people still do. And I'm, that means a lot to me. But yeah, I think whenever the time comes that I can play like the arena or something in Lincoln, that'll be a special one for me.
Mm-hmm. And say the time comes where you can play in Nebraska, who would you want mm-hmm. to play with? Like, say you could play with any musician or band that you could ever play with, whether they're dead or alive. Like, who would you want to play with?
Play with is in like play in the band or like on the same bill or something?
Let's do both. You can do both if you want. Yeah.
Okay. It would have like, as far as playing, you know what? It's going to be the same answer for both. It's going to be the same band for both. Pantera for sure. And I'm sure that was probably an expected thing coming, but I have spent a lot of time in my musical days, meticulously learning Dimebag Darrell solos and learning songs and like as close as I could. So I would love to have a shot at stepping in and actually like seeing how much I could hold my own in those shoes that are impossible to fill. But then also it would be incredible to just be on the same bill as that band, because I of course never had the opportunity to see Pantera live when all the original members were still in it. But I have so many friends who have, and from hearing the stories and seeing, live footage, that would just be, for me, it would be pretty incredible. AC/DC as well. I would love to do something like that with those guys. But yeah, top of the bucket list, at least as of today, would be Pantera for both of those answers.
That's a good choice. I can't argue with that.
I'm sure you saw about there's rumors about the Pantera reunion next year.
I did see that.
There's a lot of buzz about that. I don't know exactly how that would work, but we'll see.
Maybe that's when you can play with them.
Yeah. Hey, Pantera guys, hit me up. give me a shot.
Awesome. Thanks for doing the interview today, Evan.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Now, do you mind if I ask you one question before we wrap this up?
Go for it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it must be mentioned to the viewers and listeners of this that you hit me up not that long ago, and we were discussing, something came up about either a lesson or tabs or something like that, and we started discussing the solo that I put together for 100 Little Deaths, which of course is not on the recording or anything like that. There's no tabs on the internet to be spoken of. And in the process of thinking that you know, in our discussions that I would be like, oh, this would be cool. You know, if she's interested enough to, or cares enough to learn something that I've put together, I would love to, you know, help facilitate that in any way that I could. And you literally hit me back with a PDF of a perfectly tabbed out version of that and that very solo. So first of all, huge props on that. Second of all, I'm incredibly flattered to have had somebody do that, and for especially somebody who is as good of a player as you. I mean, we all love watching your cover videos and think that they're so great. And I guess it's not much of a question, but just this is me telling you that I was thoroughly impressed with the accuracy of how you came about that. And thank you for taking the time to do that. That was a very cool thing for me to witness.
Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So if anyone ever asks me for tabs, I'll probably just send them to you.
Just send. I'm just gonna be getting a bunch of messages from random people being like, tab this out. Give me these tabs.
Yeah. Hey, you're very good at it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Victoria. It's been awesome talking with you.